So welcome to Creative Spirit Gathering. I'm your host, Reverend Jen Hutchins, founder of Unity Arts Ministry. Today, we are going to be looking at the power of order and creating order out of chaos, perhaps chaos that's spinning around in our own minds or in our lives or in some aspect of our being that we're wishing to create some sense of order and putting a bit of a creative spin on that today. In her book, The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron writes a list of basic principles. And the first one reads as follows: creativity is the natural order of life. Creativity is the natural order of life. Life is energy, pure creative energy. And we are going to be playing on that theme today. The idea that the natural order of our lives is creative. And by tapping into the awareness of this creative energy, we can then create beauty out of whatever comes our way and out of whatever we're holding on to as well. So we're going to be leaning into the idea of order in terms of using it as a creative tool today. Last week, we talked about order more in terms of that letting things unfold naturally, right? Instead of pushing things like our gardens, we plant the seeds and we let it grow. We let it grow in its natural order and time. And today we're going to be ordering in a creative fashion. So it's a little bit of a different practice, different way of looking at the power of order in our lives. Has anybody watched or read, I suppose, anything from Marie Kondo? She's like the organization expert. Yeah, I'm seeing some hands in the room. Lots of hands in the room. Okay, so, so for anybody who maybe hasn't heard of Marie Kondo and the work that she does, she kind of comes into people's home, invited, of course, like not uninvited coming into your home, but comes in invited. And the idea is that people say, okay, I want to organize, say, my kitchen, right? If my kitchen's chaotic, I need more order in my kitchen. And she comes in and the first thing she does is tells them to take everything out. Take everything out of the drawers, out of the cupboard, and lay it out somewhere, preferably not in the kitchen, right? So you can work with a blank slate. So think about this. If we were to create order in our lives, the first step is to take everything out so we can look at what we have going on, right? Now, that might be a very, very big task. You know, again, she's doing one room at a time, so kitchen. So maybe think about what's one area in your life that you would like to create more order. Is it in your work life? Maybe in addition to work, you've got like 5 volunteer roles that you fill and you're trying to create order around this. Or if like me, you're running your own ministry, there's a lot to order and organize in that. Perhaps it's in your relationships, how to create order out of the family relationships, your friend relationships, those who are in your immediate home with you, how to create some order in that, especially when it's starting to maybe feel a little bit nutty. You know, these last few years, our relationships have been under transition in different ways. And so maybe we want to look at that. It might be that you're wishing to create order out of your creative practice. All these millions and millions of ideas that filter in through us every single day. How do you figure out which one to work on next and how to create space to hold everything and to move forward on them without just feeling overwhelmed all the time? Or perhaps you want to create order around your spiritual practices instead of simply saying, yeah, I'll meditate sometime. Really deciding What does that look like? Where am I going to put that in my life? Or maybe you want to redo your kitchen, your living room, and your bedroom all at once, right? And say, right. But maybe you want to look at relationships, spiritual practice, and creativity. If that's calling to you, then consider whatever is calling to you today. I want you to think about those areas of your life that are calling for greater order. And I want you to picture Marie coming into your house, your mind, the house of your mind, and saying, now take it all out. Unpack all the cupboards. I am seeing the smiles and the giggles going on. People are just going, it's too much. What if you could, just for a little while, right? Take it all out, strew it all over the place. Imagine an empty room somewhere that you could just lay all of it out. And then the next step, once you've sort of splattered it all everywhere, the next step is to go through it and decide, her words, what brings you joy? Looking at all of these things, what brings you joy? And those are the ones that go in your keep pile. What brings you joy? So if you're thinking about your relationships even, and you're thinking, what brings me joy? And you come across somebody in your life and you look at that one and you cringe, do we really need to hang on to that relationship in the same way, right? I'm not saying like throw the person out of your life, but if we're noticing this doesn't bring me joy right now, or it's not serving my creative spiritual practices, then maybe we don't talk to that person about our creative spiritual practices. We look at how are we engaging these things. So first step, lay it all out, whatever it is that we're organizing. Second thing we're going to do, look through it all. What brings you joy? That goes in the keep pile. Things that absolutely do not bring you any joy, we're going to recycle those, right? We're going to pass them on. Now, we might not necessarily want to pass our ideas along to somebody else, but maybe we do. But we could give them back to the universe. I no longer need this idea. It doesn't spark joy anymore. Maybe it was a creative project that we thought of 10 years ago, and we're ready to let it go. So we're ready to, put it in the donate pile. We're donating it back to spirit. We don't need to hang on to these things anymore. And then maybe we have a few things in our maybe pile. Maybe hang on to them for a little bit longer, or decide, do I really want to keep this? Do I not want to keep this? Until we narrow things down. And once we narrow things down, then we need to figure out, how do we create order out of what's left, right? Of what brings us joy. Let's take our creative practices. Of what brings us joy in our creative practices right now, how am I going to create order out of this? That becomes the next step. And for you, that might look like simply creating a to-do list that organizes the steps of the processes. Or perhaps, writing a book goes on one page, and then you have a separate page that's for finishing a photography project that you're working on, right? So maybe you have two separate projects and you're going to put them side by side. However your order looks is going to be up to you. And we probably, like when Marie Kondo goes out to visit somebody, it's not done in an hour. It's not done in an hour. This is like usually a week-long, multiple week-long, month-long, year-long, who knows, process. But today I'm inviting you to think about the concept that we can create order in our lives, in these different aspects of our being and how we respond to the world. So that when things start feeling out of control or totally chaotic and disorganized, we can lean into these spiritual tools to know I have the power within me to sit down with these ideas and to create something beautiful out of them. And I can do that by first looking at what is, accepting what is, laying it all out, looking at what brings me joy within that, and then creating order out of that joy. bringing order to my life. Now, again, I don't expect that you're going to have all this worked out in the next hour, but we're going to create space for these ideas to begin to flow forward. And we're going to do that through a torn paper collage exercise today. Again, I'm going to demonstrate this project, but if something else is calling on your heart, you really want to do this in paint or in stencils, feel free. There's no right or wrong way to do the project itself. But here's a project that I've done, and specifically doing this project to look at the different areas of my life and then creating some sort of beauty out of that. For this, you can see it sort of has a mandala. Try to get it out of the light. No, that made it worse. It sort of has a mandala feel to it in that there's a central image that then radiates outward, but it's not exactly mirrored on all sides, but there are some pieces of it that help to form, for me, balance. So being color, you'll see like this pop of color pattern repeating in 3 places. So it continues to go around. There's this green, this deep green that comes across. So I will tell you, I don't remember each of the elements, but the greens were like for health. It was about eating greens, the green vegetables. There's actually green beans. And I think this one was like a garden, like just things growing in a garden. There's tomatoes over here and pomegranates and apricots. So very literally using fruits and vegetables as part of my artistic design. The other pieces of it were looking at my spiritual practices and having that become my boundary, my border that encircled the whole thing. So I have like my stars and my deep blues representing that leaning into spirit. And then this sort of being creating some sort of central piece, that center of self-care in my life and being able to stay centered in the midst of everything else that was happening. So one of the reasons why I did it this way, I love mandala designs. I've shared them with you many times. And oftentimes when we're doing a mandala, we're starting, with our pen, and we're starting just by drawing things out, and it becomes sort of this harmony that we're creating starting from center out. Doing something like this where you have a torn paper collage, you have the individual pieces first, and then you're trying to create something that looks harmonious, creating order out of all of these diverse pieces. So it gives us space to really look at, okay, what are the different areas in my life, being these different colors of paper, and then how do I create order out of that? It might be that you are very literally thinking as you tear things out, okay, here's a sheet that has lots of greens on it, right? So tearing greens out of the magazine, and maybe greens are going to represent order in my life. Green, deep olive greens being the color of order in the 12th power system. And maybe you're going to look at blues, like icy blues that I found here, as being spiritual practices, and pinks as being your creative practices. One idea. Or this might be your book, and this is your photography project, and this is your painting ideas, right? The idea being that we could attach a theme or an idea to each of these color pieces that we're coming up with, or it could just be, I am creating order. I'm focusing on creating order and leaning into that idea of order being natural in our lives, creative order being natural in life. So if you're choosing to do this, what I did first was exactly that, right? Pulling different pages out of magazines that had a predominant color in them. Of course, you might need to cut the cat out of the advertisement or whatever is in there. And until you end up with just color. So I kind of tore it out till I had just color pieces. And then you might want to, tear those further into some shapes. So now I have a set of 4 slightly rectangle-ish shapes that I can use. So you'll tear them up. You don't have to have a plan in advance. You don't have to say, okay, well, it's going to look like this. I'm going to make a flower. I'm going to make petals. Just tear them up a little bit. And then once you have those torn pieces, what can I create out of this? How can I create something that has some sense of order or harmony out of what is here, what's in front of me? Again, as a reminder that we can always create order in our lives, no matter what the little pieces look like. We can make it fit in with other things. And there might be pieces that don't bring us joy at the end. You don't have to put all the pieces in. Allow that to be part of the natural selection of recognizing what doesn't fit in here, what's creating sort of too much, what becomes chaos instead of harmony on the page, allowing that to be part of the process. If you don't have magazines, but you have scrapbook paper lying around, these types of papers are lots of fun for doing this with. Or again, you could do this out of paints or crayons, colored pages. And if some things, right, like these I happened to come across last night, if some words or images come out that really want to be on your page, go ahead and let those in too, right? I didn't tear the heart. I got out the scissors for that one to make a new one today. So let the process be your own, but let it unfold in ways that make you feel empowered, to remind you of that power of order in your life that is accessible in all areas at all times. And it is a divine gift. Before I release you into your journal process today, we're going to go ahead and take a few moments for meditation. Really let these ideas sink into our entire being. Let them become a guiding part of the process itself. Wherever you are, if it is comfortable to do so, I invite you to put your feet flat on the ground. Notice that solid connection. Take a moment and roll your shoulders, let them drop down. Simply notice if you are holding them up high. Allow yourself to extend your spine, sitting up nice and tall, creating space for the breath. So we take a deep inhale now. Let it fill your lungs. And exhale all the way. Breathing in again, big and deep. And this time, give the exhale a sound. One more time, big, deep breath, cleansing, relaxing, and sigh it out. Let your breath simply flow naturally, coming and going at its own rhythm. Noticing the rhythm. Simply becoming the witness to yourself being breathed. We let the breath relax us as we simply rest for a moment of silence. We notice any external sounds. Simply bear witness to them as we breathe. And we rest in the silence of our own being. In the next breath, begin to bring our awareness back to our body, wiggling our toes and our fingers as we do so. Bring awareness to the mind. Noticing, presencing any thoughts that are coming forward. As together we affirm divine order is active in our lives. And so it is. So I'm going to invite you now to move into your creative practice, exploring and expressing, creating order out of the many different aspects of your beingness right now. What is coming forward for you, for clearing, for decluttering, for bringing order to?